Hi, my name is Nathan. You're watching Nice at Dice, and today I'm talking about a game called Escape the Dark Sector. This is a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players. Basically, a group of astronauts have been captured and imprisoned on this dark and dangerous space station. The game begins with you breaking out of your cell, and now you have to make your way across the space station, facing various challenges as you go in order to get back to your ship so you can escape the dark sector. It's a very challenging game. You're going to lose more often than not. It is also a very thematic game. It really captures the atmosphere that they were going for very well. But how does the game play? Well, let me show you how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my thoughts on it. So the object of Escape the Dark Sector is to make your way all the way through this deck of chapter cards and defeat a boss at the end of the game. And you need to do that without any of the player characters being reduced to 0 hit points. Each player has an astronaut, which comes with their card, and a custom dice that's specific to them. They also get a cybernetic implant, which gives them a special ability. And they have this medical record sheet. This shows various numbers along the edge here from 12 at the top to 0 at the bottom. You're going to start out by putting a little dot in the top left corner here to indicate that you are at 12 hit points. Each time you take damage, you're going to mark on the next line, next vertical line, where you are now with hit points, and then you're going to draw a line in between those two marks. And if you gain hit points, you mark and draw a line upwards. And so by the end of the game, your record is going to look something like this, with lines going possibly up and down until it bottoms out at 0, or if you can win the game without somebody dying. So you also have space next to your player card where you can put items. You have 4 slots to put items. Most items take 1 slot, but some items get placed horizontally in like a landscape format like that, and they occupy 2 slots. Okay. Most weapons, if they're ranged weapons, they get some ammo dice on them. I'll explain how those are used in a little bit. You have some more item cards here in this deck that will come out, and you have a bunch of more dice up there that will get used as you go through the game. So at the beginning of the game, you have this card, which is the start card. You flip this over. It has an illustration. It has some flavor text. For example, this one says, after weeks confined to the detention block, you finally break free of your cell. Outside, the lighting flickers intermittently, and the burning stench of recent laser fire hangs in the air. Beside a slaughtered guard, a weapon locker has been smashed open. You load up on what little gear and ammunition remains. Draw a starting weapon card for each member of the crew now, which I've already done, given each of them a starting weapon, and then draw a single item card. We'll do that. It says, you hear footsteps approaching. There's no time to lose. You must find your ship at all costs. You steel yourselves before slipping away into the gloom. Turn the first chapter card now. So there's 3 of these starting cards. They each affect the setup of the game a little bit, adjusting basically how many items you start with and a couple other little things. So you'll do that. You'll get an item card. You might get an item card like this one, some stale rations, which you can discard to restore 1 hit point to your crew member. We'll just go ahead and give it to this guy to start off with. And then we go right into the first chapter. Now, as you're going into each chapter, you need to decide which crew member is taking the lead. We'll just let this guy take the lead for now, for no particular reason. So he's going to take the lead as we go into our first chapter. So our first chapter is going to have some more flavor text, another illustration, and it's going to have you do something. So like this one has you nominate 1 member of the crew to navigate the crawl space. That member must roll 2 wisdom in 3 attempts. So what that means is he's taking his die. His die has different symbols on it, and those symbols are indicated here. So we can see by these bars that on his die he has quite a few of these fists for might. He has a good number of these eyes for cunning, and he has very few of these little star symbols for wisdom. So we're going to be needing to roll wisdom, so we would not go with him, but we might go with this guy because, as we can see, he has a little more wisdom than the other guy does. So we're trying to roll a total of 2 wisdom in 3 attempts. So we'll go with our first attempt, and we rolled might, so nothing there. And we rolled a second attempt, might, so again, nothing good. And then we rolled 1 wisdom in our third attempt. Now, this also says that for each failed attempt, the other characters lose 1 HP. So since we had 2 failed attempts, this guy'd be losing 2 HP. And after 3 failed attempts, then you just it says, if the total has not been reached after 3 attempts, the correct route is found by chance and you all emerge exhausted and shaken. So we get through it. Those rolls basically just determined how much damage this guy took. So now we're going to move on to another situation, and I'm going to look specifically for one that would be combat. So here we go. This one has the option for combat. So here's another kind of thing that you might run into is this card describes the situation and then it gives you a couple of options. We have this guy coming at us. We can just let him by or we can attack him. If we let him by, he's going to reward us with a card and that'll be it. Or we can fight him, which if we fight him, we might get a couple of cards as a reward when we defeat him. But let's say we choose to fight him. So there's a few things on here. The first is you have these symbols down in the bottom. So we're going to find dice up here that have those symbols on them, and we're going to set them up with those symbols showing. So we've got 2 fists for might. We have a eye for cunning, and we have this symbol like a little person. That means 1 more dice for each character. So we have 2 characters in this game. We're going to add 2 more dice. These 2 we roll to see what they came up. So we came up with another might, and we came up with another cunning. All right. This is the reward for beating him, 2 cards. This is how much damage he does in ranged combat or melee combat. So we'll set that there. And now we got to fight him. So we're going to decide what to do. Let's say we start with ranged combat. So each player decides what they're going to do, and then we go ahead and resolve the turns in any order we like. Okay? So let's say, for starters, this guy, he's already taken some damage. So he is going to use the first round to go over here and activate the medical drone. So he just puts his die on there to indicate he's using the medical drone. And meanwhile, this guy's going to do some fighting. So he's going to shoot with his slug pistol. It has this 1 ammo die on it. And so here, weapons have different traits, but they all have, if they're ranged weapons, they all have ammo. So you can see the word ammo here followed by a little symbol. That symbol represents this die. And then this is how many, this says fire rate, and it has another symbol of a die. So basically this weapon has 1 ammo on it, and every time you fire it, it fires 1 ammo. So that's what he's going to be doing. He's going to use that. So we're going to actually, when this die is on here, it represents ammo, that the weapon is loaded. When we use the weapon, we take the die off of there. We add 1 of these black dice for the bad guy shooting back at us, and we roll both of them together. So if this came up a target, which it did, then we take damage from the bad guy, in this case 1 damage, so we track that on our sheet here. If it had come up a blank, then we got lucky and didn't take any damage from the bad guy. Then depending on what this showed is going to determine what happened. So if it had come up with a bullet like this, then that would probably do some damage, and how much damage it would do would be based on this little box here in the corner. So we see that a bullet is equal to 2, so 2 damage from a bullet. So if we had rolled a bullet, we'd get 2 damage. When you're doing damage with ranged weapons, each damage you do takes off 1 of these dice. So if we did, let's say we did do that, we rolled the bullet, we take off 2 things here. Well, let's take off 1 of each of these. So we take those off, set them aside. Okay, so these dice are essentially the bad guy's hit points in a way. Okay, now if we had rolled this, then we look at the card to see what that means. In the case of this card, it means 2 bullets. So that would translate into a total of 4 damage, which would be nice against this opponent. If we roll this symbol, then again we look at the card to see what it does, and in this case, the weapon jams. If a weapon jams, you don't spend the ammo, but you also don't do any damage, no matter what you rolled. Well, I mean specifically you rolled this, but even if you were firing multiple bullets with a single weapon, which you can do, and let's say we rolled like those results and that, okay, the jam would cancel out the bullets, they didn't do anything, but we also didn't spend the ammo would go back on the weapon. But let's say we just rolled 1 die and we rolled the bullet, we did that damage to him there. This has been used, so it goes away, it goes back to the supply. This weapon is no longer loaded. Okay, so now we have kind of come to the end of the round. This guy used his turn to activate the medical drone. This guy used his turn to attack. We resolved the attack. Now at the end of the round, this die comes back to this guy. We flip over the medical drone. It can't be used again in this fight, and he recovers 1 hit point. So that's a way you can, one person can recover 1 hit point every fight, basically. Okay, so now we go to round 2. So for round 2, let's say this guy's just going to shoot with his weapon here, and this guy is going to use the flank maneuver. So we're going to put his die here to indicate that he's using the flank maneuver, and this guy is just going to fire his weapon. So he takes his ammo die, he takes one of these dice, he rolls both of them together. He rolled a blank here, so that's cool, he didn't get shot. And he rolled a blank here, which means he also missed. So both of these just go back to the supply. Basically, nothing happened with that except he wasted his ammo. Okay, now both of these guys have acted, so we've come to the end of the round, but because this guy used his turn to flank, between this round and the next round, this guy gets to do something. And I forgot, when he flanks, he rolls one of these. So we'll go back and do that. He rolled a target. Well, the reason why you want to flank is no matter what this guy's card says, when you flank, if you roll a target, then you only take 1 damage, okay? As it is with this particular enemy, he only does 1 damage anyway, but other enemies could do 2, 3, 4 damage. So it's kind of a safer way to go about attacking. So now, on the next round, he gets to right away, well, between rounds, because he was flanking, between rounds he gets to make an attack. He can either attack with a ranged weapon if he had one loaded, or he can make a melee attack. So since he didn't have anything loaded, he's going to make a melee attack. We'll flip this over because you can only flank once per battle, and we'll resolve his melee attack. So melee attacks are rolled using just the character's die. So we'll roll that. And we rolled an eye for cunning. So what we're looking at here is one of these dice is an eye, so we can knock that off with this die. And because this was a flank attack, he can't attack me back. So we're all good. Now, for the next round of combat, because he made a melee attack, we now go to close range combat, and that's it. We can't go back to ranged combat. It's only close combat from now on for this particular enemy. So, now in this round, we got to decide what we're going to do. There's really not a lot of options other than attacking. This guy, he's kind of, let's say he's kind of beat up. He could decide not to do anything, but somebody has to attack. So you can't have both of your guys just like guard and not do anything. So we'll just go ahead and say they're both attacking. This guy's going to attack first. So we just roll his die. Okay, he rolled a fist for might, so he can knock off one of these. But he also gets damaged in the process of fighting this guy. So this guy's melee damage is 1. He'd take 1 damage. Then this guy gets to go. Alright, he rolled an eye. So there is no longer an eye here showing. So that would be a miss. He wouldn't knock this off. He would just take damage from the enemy. Now, 2 of the sides of each of these character dice has this like shield shape around it. If you roll that shield, in melee, then you block your opponent's attack. And so whether or not these other symbols knock any dice off, you've still blocked your opponent. He doesn't do any damage to you. Okay? And the ones that have shields also have 2 of the same symbol. So if we still had another one of these and we rolled this, we'd knock off both of these dice because they're both showing fists. So basically we do that. That's how you deal with an enemy. The enemy, again, rewards you, like in this case with a couple of cards. So we'd get these cards, we'd have to give them to someone. We could, in between chapters, you can each reload 1 weapon. So he could reload his gun there, he could reload his gun there. And you can swap items around if you want. So we'll give this item to him and that item to him. And then we'll proceed to the next chapter where something else will happen. You'll just do this repeatedly until you get to the boss. And he'll have a card back like that. You'll have a really tough enemy to fight here. And you will probably either die fighting him or have died already before you can get to him, because you die more often than not in this game. But that's basically how the game works. Let's go back up top and I'll give you my thoughts on it. Alright, so hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of how the game works. I've actually recorded a full playthrough of the game. I'll put a link to that in the description if you would like to go watch that and get a more thorough idea of what's involved in playing the game and how it feels to play through it. But hopefully that gave you a good idea of the basics. So, what can we say about this game? Well, first of all, the production of the game is really good. I like it. The box cover is just awesome looking. The artwork throughout the game is very good. It all has this kind of really like dark, gritty sci-fi feel to it. It's not a look that I generally gravitate towards, but I think it suits the theme and the atmosphere that they're going for here very well. And I think it is quality artwork, so I like that. I like how you have these custom dice. They're nice and big and chunky. They're engraved, so I think those are good quality. The actual card stock itself is, good quality. So I think overall the production of the game is fantastic. I like that a lot. I like the theme, that idea of trying to escape this space station, all kinds of crazy things you're going to run into, like mutants and bounty hunters and time-traveling assassins, like all kinds of things you're going to run into on your way to escape. Now, that's about where any of the good stuff I can say about the game is. I do like the flavor text, and again, just the overall atmosphere of it is good. The thing that I find extremely frustrating about this game is it is very random, and the randomness is very much skewed towards you losing. So you're going to lose, I think, 9 times out of 10. I've played the game probably like 7 or 8 times now, at least maybe 9 or 10 actually, so quite a few times. I've lost every game except for one game, and I'll get back to that in a minute, but basically my overall impression of the game is that there's just not a lot of strategy. There are cards that will give you a choice between like a safer option or a more risky option. It's like just always take the safer option, so it's like a choice but not really a choice, because after you've played the game a couple of times, you realize you pretty much have to take the safer option every time if you want to have any kind of chance of being alive at the end of the game. So there's that. It's like it gives you some choices, but they're not really choices. And then a lot of the game is just resolved by rolling these dice. So, and the odds are always against you. You have basically in ranged combat, you have like a 33% chance of not getting shot back. And in melee combat, you have like a 33% chance of blocking an attack. So, 2 out of 3 times you're going to be taking damage, and that damage is going to add up. There are not enough ways to recover HP in the game to counteract all the damage you're going to be taking. So it's just a lot of randomness, and all that randomness taken together is going to, over the course of the game, skew towards you ultimately losing the game. Now, one thing, the one time that I played and I won, what happened was I decided, okay, so you have these cards that kind of help. This is there's 3 of them. You choose one of them at random, and this is the starting card that starts off the game, and it gives you some of the setup of the game. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to choose one of these instead of just drawing one at random. So I chose the one that lets you start out with 2 item cards, okay, from the item deck, in addition to your starter weapons. So 2 item cards from this. And I thought, instead of just drawing 2 item cards at random, I'm going to choose 2 item cards from this deck. So I chose 2 item cards. There are 3 item cards that each one of them lets you change the result on your crew dice to a specific result. Okay, so one of them lets you change whatever you rolled to a might. One of them lets you change whatever you rolled to a wisdom, and one of them lets you change whatever you rolled to cunning. All right, so I chose 2 astronauts that were both good with might, and I got those, and I chose 2 of the item cards that let you turn whatever you rolled to wisdom or cunning. Okay, so I put those 2 item cards on the same guy, so he's naturally good at rolling might, and whatever he rolls, he can now turn it to wisdom or cunning. And I just breezed through the game. At the end of the game, I beat the boss, and both of my guys had more than half of their HP still intact. So what that tells me is that basically the only way to win the game is to mitigate the luck. And the only way to successfully mitigate the luck in the long run is to get is to make use of those specific items that let you change the value of your die. And getting those items under normal circumstances, I mean, I was clearly cheating on this run through. But under normal circumstances, getting those cards is completely random. So it's like the only way to win is to mitigate the luck. The only really effective way to mitigate the luck is to get those particular item cards. And getting those particular item cards is just completely down to luck. So basically, the whole game is completely down to luck. There's some things that you can do that make you feel like you're being strategic, but at the end of the day, it's just extremely random what the outcome is. And the randomness is very skewed towards you losing. So I don't mind playing a cooperative or solo game where I lose more often than I win. I think challenging games are fine, and I think making this game difficult fits the theme and the atmosphere of the game, so I'm okay with that. But having a game where it's just so dependent on luck is just extremely frustrating for me. I like if I lose a game, I at least like to be able to sit back and say, okay, what could I have done to have, played better, and find holes in my strategy or things where I could have played more strategically. And you just can't do that here, because no matter what, at the end of the day, the result is it just comes down to luck. So that's kind of my impressions of this. It's a very high production value. I really like the atmosphere and the theme and how they bring that out through the components. But at the end of the day, I can't really recommend it because I didn't enjoy it, because it was just way too lucky. So that's my thoughts on Escape the Dark Sector. Again, my name is Nathan. This is Nice at Dice. Thank you so much for watching, and you enjoy the rest of your day.